Hey, everybody. So we're going to look at the 14-point MOU in this video, understand what it means, try to get smart about what to expect in the days and weeks ahead, about what to look for in terms of what will make it fall apart, what will make it proceed, what are the pitfalls along the way. We're going to start with a clip, just of a couple minutes, an excerpt of an interview with one of our favorite analysts, General Jack Keane. Let's go over there and listen to what the general had to say.
General, you heard him say that they're going to help the IAEA and the U.S. destroy the enriched uranium. In your opinion, do you think it's realistic that Iran is ever going to let the U.S. get in there and either take that uranium out or destroy it, or is that wishful thinking?
Well, we don't know for sure. I mean, obviously, that's our intent, and we got the right intent here. Listen, and we have got to be part of the inspection team. Iran has so manipulated the IAEA through the years that I don't have a lot of faith in them, to be frank. And what it's got to be, it's got to be anywhere, anytime inspections. What the inspection protocol was about in the past is Iran defined where to inspect, when to inspect, and how long to inspect. And then when we had information through intelligence sources that we fed to the IAEA and told them, look, there's a secret site over here that you should have access to, because we believe something is being developed there in terms of enrichment, or there's advanced centrifuges there, or whatever it was. And in all those cases, that intelligence was likely very good. And guess what? Iran said, no deal. That's not part of the protocol. So we have to be on the ground. It has to be driven by our and the Mossad's intelligence apparatus. And we go any place we want, when we want, for as long as we want. And if we can't do that, we don't have verification. And we have to have verification. This idea that somehow we may be dealing with a different regime.
Hold on a sec. Hold on. So the first issue he raises, and we'll hold this in mind when we read the MOU, is raising some of the nuts and bolts issues about what compliance with what we need on the nuclear is, what type of verification we need. And this is the types of things that are going to be negotiated over the next 30 days. That's why I'm making this video. As I said at the beginning, we want to be looking downrange instead of just saying, oh, this is a terrible deal or whatever. We want to be looking downrange. What are the issues that are going to come to a head? And the issues that he raises about about verification of the nuclear program and cooperation, that's one thing we have to look for. Now, what he's going to do in this next couple minutes is he's going to address the idea that President Trump has been floating. He doesn't attribute it to President Trump, because Jack Keane is always very deferential and respectful to President Trump. But here he's actually calling out the president for for continually saying that this is a new regime. These are different people. This is not the old regime. They're more pragmatic. They're more practical. Listen to how he pushes back on that. Let's just back it up a couple seconds here. Let me just back it up a couple seconds here.
May be dealing with a different regime, and its behavior is something we're going to be able to adjust to and accommodate, is an absolute absurdity. This is a diabolical, tyrannical regime, and they are clearly feel the pressure on them from the United States military operations. Just last week, 2 bombing campaigns to get them to this deal, and obviously the economic warfare that the blockade and what Secretary Besson is doing, which is extraordinary. They feel all of that pressure. But believe me, the nature of the regime has not changed. And we have got to be clear-eyed in dealing with these guys. What they say and what they do are two different things. They cannot be trusted. We have to enforce compliance.
To your point.
Okay. See, so that's the second point about the nature of the regime. The regime has not changed. And therefore, we can't take their word for anything. We can't take their word for anything. This is also obviously a big issue that we need to look at in the days ahead. And now he's going to bring up a third issue. Bill Melugin is going to ask him now about some hindsight about what could have possibly been done differently over these last few months.
About all that pressure, obviously hindsight is 2020. But do you think President Trump should have ever entered into that ceasefire back in April, or should he have just kept his pedal to the metal, wiped out all their military targets to keep up maximum pressure with these negotiations?
Yeah, I definitely feel that is what we should have done. We had 2 weeks to go, 25% of the targets. We really had significant pressure. We could have finished the offensive operation, accomplished the assigned mission, and then began the defensive operation to open the Straits of Hormuz. And I think people at the time were very concerned about the Straits. A single drone is going to stop the operation being successful. That is completely unfounded. I think now that they've seen us work through a lane there and have a lot of success with it and defeat everything that's come at them. I mean, we haven't seen a fast boat in like 4 weeks because we defeated all the fast boats that came at it, and same thing with the drones. We could have done that operation. And I think in hindsight, people will recognize that's what we should have done and just continued the military operation. But that's not where.
Okay, and then he goes on to say that's not where we are. Now we just have to hope this diplomatic process works. But listen to what he was saying. Let's understand what he was saying there. He was saying that the Straits of Hormuz were on their way to being opened anyway. We already had opened up another lane. Their ability to stop things going through there was diminishing. We haven't seen a fast boat in 4 weeks. I talked about in the last few weeks during the quote-unquote ceasefire how the Americans were degrading the Iranian positions around the strait, making it more difficult for them to keep it closed. He was basically saying we were on the road to victory already in terms of the Straits of Hormuz, which is, it seems that this is what the deal is all about. So let's take a look at the MOU. U.S. releases official agreement with Iran, 14-point text. Let's jump down to it. The United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran have jointly agreed in good faith to the following. Now, the first clause is a big one, a big one. The first clause in it has to do with ending the war on all fronts, and what they really mean is Lebanon. Look how many times Lebanon gets mentioned in this paragraph. The United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran and their allies, Israel, in the current war, are signing this MOU to declare the immediate and permanent termination of military operations on all fronts, including in Lebanon, and undertake from now on not to initiate any war or military operation against each other, and to refrain from the threat or use of force against each other, and ensuring the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Lebanon. Territorial integrity and sovereignty of Lebanon? Lebanon hasn't had sovereignty since the early 70s, since the Civil War started, and certainly not since Hezbollah was created in the 80s and has essentially taken over Lebanon, right? I mean, Hezbollah controls Lebanon. They have for decades, brought wars upon it. Hezbollah is much stronger than the Lebanese military. But we're supposed to lay off of Hezbollah to respect the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Lebanon. That is code. This line here, ensuring the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Lebanon, just to really be able to look down range at the next few weeks and the types of pressure and statements we're going to be seeing. Watch for this. This line is going to be interpreted by not just Iran, but Turkey and Qatar and all of them. They're all going to interpret this line as meaning that Israel has to withdraw its troops from Lebanon. Okay, watch for it. The final deal will confirm the permanent termination of the war on all fronts, including in Lebanon, 3 times, and the other provisions of this paragraph. So this is very sticky. The Israelis have already said they're not party to the agreement, even though it says here that they're signing it. Now, let me tell you also what I'm hearing on the ground here in Israel today from various reports that officers in the field, commanders, combat officers in the field in South Lebanon are saying that the rules of engagement, the orders from high command for the rules of engagement have already changed in a disturbing way that makes it much more difficult for Israeli soldiers to open fire on threats that they're encountering. The threat has to be much more active and immediate than before, and this endangers our troops. Ceasefires are always very dangerous for Israel because of the way the enemy picks away at them, and Israel gets itself into a defensive posture that it has to be reactive. This is very dangerous, and this might be the big thing that blows up the MOU. Now, my prediction is that the way this MOU will be blown up is that the Iranians are going to continue to tell Hezbollah, to instruct Hezbollah, maybe just with a wink and a nudge, but Hezbollah is going to keep pecking away at Israel and provoking Israel in ways that look minor to outsiders, drones and things, to try to get Israel to respond. And when Israel responds, Iran will point at Israel and say to America, rein them in or you're violating the ceasefire. And this is going to have the same dual effect as it had last week, where it's designed to widen the rift between Israel and the United States, and also at the same time show that the Iranians, the Iranians are flexing their muscles and showing that they're actually still in charge in Lebanon. Now, it also has a very powerful psychological effect on the population in Lebanon, because the Hezbollah has always presented itself as the defenders of Lebanon, as the real power brokers there, as the real people who are in charge. And in the Middle East, showing your power, showing that you're the one who's really in charge, counts for a lot. And all the Lebanese opposition to Hezbollah in Lebanon that has been emboldened in recent months and become more public about their opposition to Hezbollah. And you have TV stations like it's called MTV. It's a cable station, very popular cable station. We've seen shows there where people are getting more and more bold on these talk shows about speaking up against Hezbollah. We have prominent journalists speaking up against them. One untold story over the last couple of days is that the anti-Hezbollah movement, I would say, or the voices, the anti-Hezbollah voices in Lebanon that have become more and more emboldened, are today a little bit shocked and bewildered and disappointed by this MOU, because they felt that they had the wind at their backs to finally push Hezbollah out, and they were in favor of Israel continuing to degrade Hezbollah. They're actually upset. News reports out of Lebanon today is that the anti-Hezbollah people in Lebanon are upset about this MOU. Something to keep in mind, and watch how that develops in the coming days. I'm not going to go into such great detail with every clause, because I want to focus on the clauses that are most immediate. Number 2 is that the United States and Iran are going to respect each other's sovereignty, whatever. The United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran commit to negotiating and achieving a final deal in 60 days, but it can be extendable with mutual consent. President Trump has already said he has no problem extending it so long as the Iranians behave themselves. Now, then it says that immediately upon signing this MOU, and notice this clause 4 and 5 also, upon signing the MOU, not all the clauses have that. We'll get to that in a bit. Immediately upon signing the MOU, this is America will draw down the blockade, and that it'll be totally taken out the blockade within 30 days. I'm not going to read every word. Number 5 is upon signing the MOU. This is about the Straits of Hormuz. Okay, this is really what the deal is about. This is really what Trump wanted in this deal. He even said it yesterday, where he came right out and said, listen, if we hadn't done this deal, the Straits would never get open, no matter how much we bombed. He was basically admitting that the strategy of closing the Straits of Hormuz worked for the Iranians. I've been saying for the last week or so, if you picture yourself in the Situation Room in Tehran the day this war starts, and you're getting bombarded by the US military, the Israeli military, and you know that you're no match for them. If you were thinking to yourself, what's the strategy I can employ to shut this whole thing down so that I survive? What's the strategy I can employ? How do I get America to back off? How do I get America to, how do I make it so politically painful for President Trump that he finally backs off? The best thing is to close the Strait of Hormuz. And that's exactly what they did, and it worked. So what this clause says, this is like the main course of the whole thing. Upon the signing of this MOU, the Islamic Republic of Iran will make arrangements using its best efforts for the safe passage of commercial vessels with no charge for 60 days only from the Persian Gulf to the Sea of Oman and vice versa. Let me remind you that by international law, this is an international waterway that everyone is supposed to have free passage. It is illegal for anyone to charge fees through an international waterway. And it's saying this MOU is allowing them to charge fees after 60 days. It's nuts. The traffic of commercial vessels will immediately start, considering the need for removing the technical and military obstacles, and demining by the Islamic Republic of Iran will be instated within 30 days. The Islamic Republic of Iran will conduct dialogue with the Sultanate of Oman to define the future administration and maritime services in the Strait of Hormuz, in discussion with other Persian Gulf countries. Now, we all remember a couple of weeks ago when Iran announced that they were having that they were in conversations with Oman to control the Straits of Hormuz and charge fees. Trump then threatened Oman that he would blow them up if they did that. Oman denied it and took offense that President Trump would say that, because they denied they were having those conversations. Secretary Bessent threatened Oman and told everyone that he told them that going to be a big price to pay if they engage in this activity. And it turns out that this MOU actually grants Oman and Iran control over the Strait of Hormuz, which seems ludicrous. It seems like it was written by the Iranians, which is going to lead to my suspicion about the whole thing that I'll share at the end. The United States of America undertakes with regional partners to develop a $300 billion reconstruction and economic development fund for Iran. This drives me nuts. At the end of the 12-day war, here's some context. At the end of the 12-day war, right when it ended, President Trump declared that he would be lifting all the sanctions and allowing Iran to sell its oil, because the reasoning he gave was that they had suffered so much damage during the 12-day war that they should have a little relief so that they could rebuild their country, because they need to rebuild their country. That was the phrase he used. Now, what did they do with that money when they started selling their oil again? What did they do with it? How did they spend the money over the next few months? Because a few months later, in the fall, heading into December, there was like a drought. There was water shortages. People would open the tap at home in Iran and no water would come out. There was blackouts because they didn't have enough electricity. And it got so bad economically because of how bad things were with energy and with water that the people took to the streets and almost brought the regime down. But meanwhile, they ramped up their ballistic missile production from 30 to 50 missiles per month to 100 missiles per month. And they were investing in the rebuilding of their air defenses and everything. This is when you gave them economic relief. They didn't use a cent of it to rebuild their country. They used it all to ramp up their ballistic missiles and all of their military hardware. And we're doing the same thing again. We're giving them economic relief. Why? Whatever happened to defeating the regime? Anyway, number 7, the United States of America undertakes to terminate all the sanctions. That's what this is. All the sanctions, all the UN Security Council resolutions, all IAEA, Atomic Energy Board of Governors resolutions. Everything gets removed. Everything gets lifted off Iran. Why? As a reward for what? Number 8, the Islamic Republic of Iran reaffirms that it will not ever develop nuclear weapons. But look at this. This is the guts. The main issue for America was Hormuz, but this is the guts of the MOU. This is the most important clause. The United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran have agreed to resolve the disposition of stockpiled enriched material pursuant to a mechanism that will be mutually agreed upon in accordance with the schedule mentioned in paragraph 7, right, which has to do with the removal of all the sanctions and all of the restrictions on them, with the minimum methodology to be down blended on site under the supervision of the IAEA. No removal of the uranium. The two parties, it'll just be down blended, so it won't have the same level of enrichment. The two parties also agreed to discuss the issue of enrichment and other mutually agreed matters related to the Islamic Republic of Iran's nuclear needs based on a satisfactory framework being agreed upon in the final deal. Look at that word salad. The two parties have agreed to discuss the issue based on a framework agreed upon in the final deal. Sorry, oh boy, I just knocked my lamp. And the final deal will confirm the provisions of this paragraph, whatever those provisions are. It's so vague. The United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran acknowledge the critical importance of the nuclear issues above mentioned. They expressed their intention to immediately address these issues in the negotiations in order to achieve mutual agreement on them. What a word salad. They're agreeing to have a conversation to agree about how to deal with the nuclear issue. Pending the final deal, the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran agree to maintain the status quo. The Islamic Republic of Iran will maintain the current status quo of its nuclear program. Really? And the United States of America will not impose any new sanctions and will not deploy any additional forces in the region. The United States of America undertakes that immediately upon the signing of this MOU and until the termination of sanctions, the U.S. Department of Treasury will issue waivers for the export of Iranian crude oil, petroleum products, and derivatives, and all associated services, including banking transactions, insurance, transportation. The United States is going to facilitate the Iranians being able to make money and sell their oil and take off all of the financial restrictions. Number 11, the United States of America undertakes to make fully available all the frozen and restricted funds and assets of the Islamic Republic, all of them, upon the implementation of this MOU. They're making all the frozen and restriction funds and assets of the Islamic Republic available upon implementation of this MOU. Okay, and look what it says here. The United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran agree that an executive mechanism will be established to monitor the successful implementation of this MOU. But look what it says here, 13. After signing this MOU, and subject to the beginning of the implementation of paragraphs 1, 4, 5, 10, and 11, so 1, 4, 5, 10, and 11 have to be first. That's phase 1. They left this for paragraph 13 of 14. But what paragraph 13 is saying is that there are 5 clauses, 1, 4, 5, 10, and 11, that all have to be right away when this thing is signed. That's now. And the continuing implementation of these measures, the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran will start negotiations regarding the final deal based on the other paragraphs. And then the final thing is that the UN Security Council is going to ratify this whole thing. Okay. What are 1, 4, 5, 10, and 11? So very quickly, 1 is a cessation of hostilities in Lebanon. 4 is a lifting of the blockade. 5, Hormuz gets opened, and Oman and gets involved, whatever. And then what were the last 2? 10 and 11, right? 10 is lifting all sanctions and offering waivers to allow the export of Iranian crude oil. And 11 is no more frozen assets. They get all their banking open, all their assets open. Now, this seems like it was written by the Iranians themselves. It seems like too good to be true for them, like what's the deal? So I want to share with you just a little bit of analysis from a great Israeli analyst. He's really one of my absolute favorites. He's on every morning on one of the cable stations here in Israel. His name is Amit Yagur. He's a retired colonel. He was very high up in Israeli naval intelligence. He's just a phenomenal analyst. I always find him to be really, really sharp. And he was interviewed in Hebrew. I'm just going to paraphrase to you what he said this morning. He said that he's been skeptical of this deal from the moment it started taking shape, and that the signing only deepened that skepticism. He said there's simply too many anomalies here that don't fit Trump's character. They don't fit anything that's been said or promised up until now. Like there seems to be an about face on so many issues that the administration dug in on, charging in the Straits of Hormuz and giving the financial compensation to the regime. There seem to be so many things that are being given in on, and we're not even taking out the uranium. It's too much. It's too over the top. It's like what all the things you've been insisting on and saying, and Trump saying, that he's going to insist on all his demands being met and everything else. And then suddenly it's like a total capitulation. How can it be? So what Amit Yagur went on to say was that his read on the deal actually is that this is an agreement to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, period. He believes that all the other clauses, the sanctions relief, the uranium provisions, Lebanon, they were all essentially written to give Iran what it needed to sign, but that Washington's real and only objective was Hormuz. And he pointed out that Witkoff and Trump also more or less said as much. Okay, so now he's not saying he likes the deal. He's saying that it was handled badly and that it hands a big win to the Iranians and all this. But what he's saying, his attitude was, it just seems that the Americans wanted to get this thing signed, and then we'll worry about phase 2 later on. And I see that as a big flaw in this deal. I made a video about it the other day about it being a Witkoff deal, right? Now, what do I mean by that? You see, the biggest issue that this thing is supposed to be about is the nuclear issue. And you see how vague the nuclear issue is. Like when you listen to Jack Keane talking about what type of compliance we're going to need in order to really satisfy us. And then and what that looks like. And you think about how complex this issue is and how intransigent the regime has been and how they haven't really changed their stripes. What is the likelihood that we're going to get to any kind of agreement? Well, what Witkoff and Kushner like to do is take the most contentious issue, which also happens to be the most important issue, and if it's going to prevent us from signing a deal because we can't come to an agreement on it, let's kick it down the road and say we'll deal with it at a later date so that way we can sign something now. Problem is, you're never going to reach that agreement. It's just like Gaza. It's just like the Gaza 20-point plan, right? In Gaza, the big thing that they didn't want to deal with was who's going to disarm Hamas. So they just left it vague, stuck it into the deal, kind of alluded to it and said it'll get worked out at some point. It never had a plan. And that's why everything is stalled down in Gaza. I mean, Hamas is still in charge there, right? Because you never get to phase 2 if the big sticking point that would blow up the whole deal is just ignored and put down the path. So that's what happened here as well. And what Amit Yagur is saying actually has a big silver lining in it. He's saying, listen, they just wanted to get the straits open, calm everything down. And then down the road, when things fall apart, if it falls apart, okay, like Trump is saying, we'll go back to bombing. So I think everyone in our community, I don't know what's real, what's not real. There's a lot of confusion, a lot of worry in the pro-Israel camp. I think everyone needs to take a deep breath and calm down. Throughout the Trump administration, it's been a roller coaster. We have 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 5 steps forward, 1 step back, sometimes 2 steps back, 1 step. We have to stop screaming that the sky is falling every time there's a step back. Okay? The story is far from over. We're not done with the Iranian regime yet. There's a lot of ways this deal can end up being blown up. A lot more twists and turns left here. Okay? Yes, I agree. It's not a good deal. But let's all keep a level head throughout all this. Okay? That's my take for now. We'll talk more later.